we are totally different, but still the success of the event is the volunteers. Year one, 6 years ago, we overplanned. On an event, you want to make sure you got volunteers, you want to make sure you got money, you want to make sure you got porta potties. Those are your three most important things. So the volunteers, it was the first time we were doing an event, we didn't know what to do, so we needed over 155 volunteers. We filled those slots, but we learned over time this past year, due to the logistics of the course, but then also learning, is we need 80 volunteers. And we need about 10 to help set up the event. Then throughout the day, we need about 60 to handle the 7 crosswalks. And then in the evening at takedown, we need about another 10. So our volunteer base is at one day, but it's for 2.5-hour shifts. But also it's an important aspect of you're a crossing guard, and you are there to protect the spectators, but also to protect the racers, so there's no interference from spectators. So with us, we need that 2.5 hours. And so I use signup.com, which is a great service. It does cost. You can use Sign Up Genius, or there's some other management tools for volunteers. But I see benefits that we use throughout the day with signup.com. And so with that, I gave you a good overview of the event and how many volunteers I need. And it's just for a one day. So Nathan, you're 52 weeks a year.
Yeah, and so the way that we look at our volunteers here is they're an extension of our staff. If you actually look at our org chart or organizational chart, volunteers are a part of that. And so we can't, with the amount of events that we have, I don't have enough staff to just run it when you have 500 people that come in for shows sometimes. So, a couple things. I like to start with a story because it humbleizes me at the same time, and talks about like a mistake I made when they first came in, when I first came in. And it kind of goes around this idea that your volunteers deserve to be heard, just like a normal staff member would. It's very easy when you come in and you're running a project, especially when you're working with people all year long opposed to just one. The beautiful thing about what Paul gets to do is he gets to get done and take in that feedback, and then he's got a year to consider the feedback and do it. On the other hand, with me, I get feedback always, all the time, and it's got to be welcome. So, one of the story that I had is when I first came in, I had one person that was a very important volunteer that came in, and she was talking to me about this laundry list of things that the previous executive director didn't do, and she was very frustrated that none of it got done. And I kind of blew her off, where I said, you know what, I don't have time to get to that right now, we'll look at it another time. And she took offense to that, and at the same time I took offense that she took offense to it. And so, but rather than sitting down and understanding that she just actually wants to help just like any other staff member would, and what you have to do as a leader is take time to hear the feedback from those volunteers. And then you don't always have to do what they say right away, but being able to make sure that they're heard enough where you sit there and say, hey, look, this is what we're planning on doing. This is great feedback. I'm going to write it down, and we're going to come back to this at a later date if you don't have time to do it now. A big part of what we do here is finding ways for them to feel like that they're invested in this place, and instead of writing us a check, they are giving over their time. When I write grants, we track all of our volunteer hours, because actually if you go online, you can type out and see the value that they give you, which is like $20-something an hour for a volunteer of in-kind donation time. So when you're applying for grants, that's important to know. I come from a mentality, and this is from some of the training that I've gone through from like the Studer Institute, which Quint Studer, He does a lot of like healthcare training and stuff like that. But it's this belief in transparency of the organization. You as an organizational leader will determine what is appropriate. I'm not saying that you show them every line of your books. You don't necessarily have to do that. But my volunteers very much know when we're approaching record-breaking numbers for the year. They know how many more events that we need to do in order to hit a certain point. They know where I'm at with my Small Giving Arts Angels campaign. They know how big my budget's gotten. They know if my staff are become full-time members or part-time staff members. So because I work with them every single day, I very much want them to be invested in what we do. So when we get into ideas like retention, yeah, we have like, JPAC in theory has like 300 volunteers that help us. I'll say a couple of them are very, very select events. You know, they want to come in and see Leanne Rimes perform on stage. So that's like why they're there. But we have like 20 core people. In order to keep getting those core people back over and over and over again, they do want to feel like they're heard, and they want to feel like they see the investment grow because of what they're giving. And you do that through transparency, and you do that from sitting down with them. We do have a couple events that we do twice a year. We have a dashboard at JPAC. Dashboard basically are fundamental goals that we have, usually measured numerically on if we're achieving our operational plans for the year. Example of this is hold 3 volunteer appreciation events a year. And this goes on a tracking dashboard that we do. So we know that we have to say thank you at least 3 times a year to our volunteers, besides like the everyday thank you. So we've got a box to go to a Sky Carp game. You know, we've got that coming up at the end of the year. We always do something around Christmas just to make sure we're saying thank you to them. Another thing that we're playing around with that is a cool idea that somebody else gave me, because most of my ideas are taken from other people and kind of like JPACized. And so, you know, find ways to sit there and tell them how long that they've been with you and like give them different levels of thanks, right? So one of the things that we're toying around with, we haven't done this yet here, is they all want these JPAC polos that we have, and everyone's like, oh, can I get a white one? Because everyone's expected to wear white and black. We're playing around with the idea of saying, well, if you volunteer 50 hours, we'll give you a white polo. And if you volunteer 100 hours, we'll give you a red polo. And if you've hit this level, now you're at a black polo. It's like karate. But like, it's kind of fun because, you know, you get to keep reminding them over and over again about what the bar is. And then after that, we'll give them a little star on their sleeve, like, whatever. We'll keep riffing off of it. But, you know, have fun with them. And I will say, as Janesville continues to grow and the events continue to be more and more and more, that volunteer pool is shrinking. So I would say, especially like, I'm like the oldest level millennial that you can be. I'm like just a shade under the Oregon Shale generation. There's not a ton of people volunteering in our age demographic. They're usually older. And so I think one of the things that we can do as a community as a whole is try to talk, like Paul mentioned when he stood up and talked about the importance of volunteering, to try to get that up and going again. It is a very different world that we live in today. Clearly, we're trying to figure stuff out, but the more people we can get into that volunteer base, the better. I know that then the other thing that you want to do is listen to your volunteers and like what the scary positions are. You know, like Paul just rattled off a bunch of things that they do. Like for me, there's a lot of people that don't want to house manage because it sounds like it's way too official of a position, even though there's volunteers that come in that are capable of house managing. Tending the bar, some people want to do, some people don't. So like find entry-level ways to get them in and slowly introduce them to other things that you have. I have ushers that have come in and they never wanted to house manage, and then they come and they see it, how it actually works. And then A, that's because of the transparency, and B, that's because once you start seeing things, you start knowing things, and then it's not scary anymore, and they become very good house managers. So an house manager basically runs the volunteer team. So that's kind of like my overall arcing thoughts on volunteers. One of the things that, you know, Spotlight Kids did this very well when they were here, Heather, but, you know, we work and we partner with a lot of other arts organizations. Make sure that they understand when they come in that those volunteers aren't just JPAC's volunteers or your volunteers. They belong to everybody. Because sometimes when you're working with rental groups or other partnering people, and they aren't reminded that these volunteers are there to help support everyone, sometimes you have people that forget that, and then they start treating them in a way that they won't want to come back. And so just make sure that if you're managing the event, that goes everywhere from your independent contractors to the other people that you're working with, that they understand who the volunteers are and that they're appreciative of their support, because you will lose volunteers if they feel disrespected by anybody in the pipeline. Oh.
Going back to Nathan's part about keeping your volunteers informed, there's nothing better than a well-informed volunteer. The Tour of America's Dairyland, which is the umbrella for the Janesville Town Square Grand Prix, we are the first race of 11 throughout the summer. The Tour of America's Dairyland is the longest daily series of racing for the United States Cycling Association. I volunteered 4 years before we ever brought a race because I wanted to find out how to run it as a volunteer. First thing I learned, I went to a location. The volunteer center was 2 blocks away from the start finish. I started asking the volunteer coordinator questions, had no clue about the event, had no idea about bicycling, no idea about where should I report and stuff. Here's your vest, you go to the start finish line. Where is it? Over there by the bank. I went to Bayview over in Milwaukee. I'm here for my 3 o'clock assignment. Oh, he went that way. Who went that way? The coordinator. Where? Over there by the that group over there. Went over there. Couldn't find the guy. So I said, where do I go? It looks like you're supposed to go down at turn number, so I went there. So one of the first things we did, and we've gotten very positive feedback from the participants and the spectators. Each one of our crossing people have a lanyard that's got a map of the course. It shows where the start-finish line is, where the emergency shelters are, where each crosswalk is, and if there are any questions, it has my personal phone number, John Westfall, who is my co-chair's personal phone number, all the information possible. So if somebody comes up and says, I'm supposed to be at the start-finish line, I don't know where to go. And we've got a crossing guard over there by the transit center. They can take that and show the person, and boom. And the other thing that we've gotten positive feedback about is the volunteers are so positive about Janesville. They says, do you get these people from the Chamber of Commerce? No. They're just people that want to see quality events come to town. And so the well-informed volunteer goes a long way. Another thing is going back to the signup.com that we use. You can go in there. They can select where they want to volunteer at. It directs them to sign a waiver for the United States Cycling Association. But also, there's about a 3.5-minute video that shows them exactly what the function of a crossing guard is. And it's Mike Bolster, who is in charge of our course marshals and things like that. Him and his son taped it in the backyard. I mean, he's got this goofy cycling hat on and his t-shirt, and he looks like a volunteer should look on a beautiful sunny day in June in downtown Janesville. And that's very helpful. Another thing is that we've got one person assigned to the volunteer check-in area. And we, in our description of what the individual is going to do at a crossing guard, report to this parking lot to the volunteer tent. And the nice thing about it is that with signup.com, on the morning of the race, I can print out all the sheets of who's coming and their phone number if there's a problem. And if crossing walk number 4, the person doesn't show up for the 4:30 shift, that volunteer coordinator at that table is on the phone to me. I've got built in some utility people. Hey, Kurt, would you go over to 6 and relieve the person? We told that person they were going to be done at 4:30, not 4:45, not 5 o'clock. 2.5 hours. And if people can only do it for 2 hours, no problem. 2 hours is just fine. But I'm just saying is that build in some relief, because not all volunteers show up. Either they don't show up or they don't show up on time. So build in somebody who's passionate about the event, that wants to help you out in any way, shape, or form all day. Those people are the ones that, hey, Susie's over at crosswalk 5 and she got an emergency at home, can boom, take care of it. Or the other thing is going around where Nathan says, show your volunteers that you appreciate it. If it's not me or John walking around, just checking to see how things are going. Hey, how's it going, Nathan? Hey, great, great. Boy, I could use some water. Hey, could you get we have a youth group from First Lutheran Church. Renee Engen and her husband, who is the minister over there, they are our hydration people. We provide the backpacks that are insulated, and they fill them up and just walk around. But there are many instances where John or myself says, any chance I could get a bathroom break? Yeah, give me your thing, because I've already got a tent. Yeah. Go, take your time.
They're a VIP.
And that goes a long ways, because what would be really offensive to that volunteer who's given 2.5 hours of their time, if I got on the phone and says, hey, could I get somebody over here? No, you just do it. It's your moment of truth. So don't, because you're the co-chair, or you're getting all the accolades and stuff, don't think that you're above taking the tent or taking the flag and the vest and allowing somebody for a bathroom break.
Yeah, you got to do it all. And that was like really good. And one of the things when you mentioned communication, having it all in one spot, which is like awesome to have it on a lanyard like that. That's phenomenal. Like for us, what we do is, this is something my managing director put together. Literally says the event, says the start time. If it's general admission, they scan tickets. Basically how long it is, does it have an intermission, who's in charge, who's the staff member on site. Send them back there to look at this. So like there's no debate or confusion about everything. So then you're directing them to one spot opposed to trying to tell 20 people the same information. The other thing I wanted to make mention of really quick here is like when you're working with the same volunteer corps for a really long time, I do believe, and we've adopted this, and I'm happy to send it to anybody that would want it, essentially like a standards of behavior document. So something like the farmer's market or that uses routine volunteers over a long time. So a standards of behavior document, because you could lose a bunch of volunteers if one of the other volunteers are disrespectful in ways that are inappropriate. It can get your organization in a lot of beef. So it's like, all my volunteers I look at as VIPs. So, and that includes the volunteers treating each other like VIPs. It includes the staff members treating the volunteers like VIPs. So everything that we do here at JPAC, the staff, our volunteer actors, our directors, everybody has to sign what's called a standards of behavior document. We do this in usher training. And essentially what it is it's a code of conduct that sits and talks about things like sexual harassment. It talks about things like showing up on time. 100% if they can work in a way that is like they're always a little bit late, that's workable. But how do they go about telling you you're late if they're here every single day for a year? Because it's like, I've got some people that will be like, well, I'll volunteer for a bartender, but I won't do it if this person is doing it because I always have to set up for them. And so what you have to do is kind of create a standards of behavior. So when you have to have a conversation with a volunteer about something that's going on, it's very not emotional. And so the conversations that I've had with people actually not only help me keep all my other volunteers happy that were getting frustrated, but actually keep the volunteer that was causing it. It's a boundary, okay? So essentially what would happen is, I had one volunteer that was taking pictures of one of the shows up in the balcony. He would just go up and start taking pictures, and that was something that we don't allow. So in there it states that they need permission to do that. And if I didn't have the standards of behavior document, it could have turned into a thing where you pull them aside and be like, hey, you're not supposed to be taking pictures up there. Well, no one told me I wasn't supposed to be taking pictures up there. Well, I'm telling you now not to take pictures up there. Why can't I take pictures up there anymore? It becomes this like back and forth. It starts like escalating, and it doesn't need to. But if you have that and you've gone over with it and you require them to sign it over a long time, if you're doing one event, I don't know if it's necessarily necessary, but when I'm working with them every single day, then I can pull them aside and say, hey, look, remember this document that we did? It just states it right there. We signed it, so I know that you know. I'm going to send you a reminder right now, so we know that this isn't going to happen again because it made somebody feel uncomfortable. And then it's done. And if they can't do that, if they continue to do it, then that's their choice, and they can't be a volunteer anymore. But I'd be happy to show that to you. There's 2 lawyers on our board that looked over that, and our whole entire team have put it together. It's constantly under review on an annual basis. But it's a good way of making sure that they're all on the right track, and it's not meant to be a scary thing either. What it's supposed to do is just make sure that we're all operating underneath the same respectful rules.
Also, one of the other things too is that listening to all the introductions in the auditorium, one of the things that our event for the Janesville Town Square Grand Prix is it is a fundraiser for us. It takes about $65,000 to $80,000 to run it, and we solicit those funds directly to businesses and other organizations. So when everything is said and done, we might have $1,000 left in the checking account. We save that for next year because it helps us with some of the licensing fees that we have to do. So we build the event based on our funds. It's a fundraiser. Our motto for the whole event is our hometown, our downtown, our passion, bicycling. So all we're trying to do is create an environment to bring people from outside of Janesville into Janesville so that they can see what type of community we have. The hospitality and food and beverage industry benefit most. We're not able to, we haven't been able to track yet if the retail people can benefit, but we do think that people show up on that day in June. And one of the things too about our event, thanks to the benefit of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, because of the grant we received from them for marketing outside of Rock County, we market a 100-mile radius of Janesville. So we go as far as Lake Michigan, over to Dubuque, down to just the other side of Elgin, and up past Madison. They survey the day of the event to see who's coming. And a large part of the attendance is from the southeast part of Wisconsin, which is unique to this event because that was one of the first events that they saw that demographic that they weren't familiar with. So what I try to explain to retailers is that, you know, you never know the residual effect of your event because there's a chance that possibly on a beautiful fall day, people who attended the race in June, hey, let's go over to Janesville and check out that store, that woman's store, Velvet and Tool, or Classy Rascals, or Raven's Wish. And so our event is doing it for fun and exposing Janesville to 10 countries, and that includes the United States, and 42 states in the U.S. And the other thing too is with our event this year, what we're able to do is, like I said, the Tour of America's Dairyland, which we are a part of, is the longest running series in the United States for bicycle racing. And that's with the United States Cycling Association. Well, this year, we were fortunate enough to have the U.S. Olympic Committee. On Wednesday, the day before the race, the U.S. Olympic Committee, we were out in the Rock Prairie area out by Rock Prairie Church. We had 52 racers from the United States come in and race. They bought groceries, they bought hotel rooms, they bought beverages, and so our event, we were able to connect with the United States Olympic Committee, who now knows who Janesville is, who Rock County is. So that's what we do it for, is that we're hoping that we'll get more events like this so that Janesville can benefit and be exposed to the world. And one of the neat things too is that in the cycling world, they have unbelievable social media and podcasts, and there's worldwide podcasts that Janesville's mentioned quite often in, and that's what we do it for, is from the fundraiser events.
We are at time, everyone, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at all. I know we talked at you a lot, and so if you have any questions regarding anything that we say, if you have like single day events, Paul is a wealth of knowledge. Make sure you reach out to him. Anything that's long lasting, we have single events too. Feel free to reach out to me too. So thanks for coming, and have fun at your next spot.
Thank you. Good luck.
Yeah.